Welcome back to Chris's DIY workshop. This is the second in a two-part series showing you how I painted my garage floor with two-part epoxy garage floor paint. If you haven't watched episode 1, I strongly recommend clicking the link in the description below and watching that first, because there is lots to think about before starting your epoxy garage floor project. In this episode we will go over what equipment you need, how to mix your paint, how to prepare the room ready for paint, how to apply the paint, and how to distribute the stone chips. This is definitely an easy project any competent DIY will be able to tackle on their own, so what are you waiting for? Let's get going.
If you've completed all your pre-assessment checks, then you're ready to get your wallet out and buy some epoxy goodies. In order to paint your garage floor with epoxy paint, you will need your paint, some mixers, xylene thinner, a jug, painting brushes to go around the edge, masking tape, a roller tray, a roller and a roller pole, something that you can do all your preparation on, like a dust sheet or in this case a tarpaulin. You don't have to do this, but I'm using some decorative chip. You might need some kitchen roll in case of any spillages. If you can't ventilate the area really well, get yourself a really high quality respirator certified for use with solvents. Before you do any painting, preparation is key. Get rid of any debris on the surface using the brush, and then I'm going to go over everything with my shop vac to make sure there is no dust. You want the paint sticking to the floor, not to the dust that's on top of the floor.
Swept it, I've hoovered it, and I've put some masking tape around, because once you mix these two parts together, you only get 20 minutes working time.
Let's just quickly talk about coverage. Every litre should cover 10 square metres. There are lots of reviews online that say that the coverage is massively overestimated, and people have ended up using twice as much as they need. You really don't know how porous your concrete slab's going to be. So that means my 5 litre tin should cover 50 square metres. My garage is 6 metres by 3 metres, that's only 18 square metres. I want to do 2 coats on this floor, and if I bought 2 lots of 2.5 litre, it was going to cost £40 extra just to have it split into 2 tubs. Don't follow what I'm doing here because it goes against the instructions, but I'm going to try and split this can and the catalyst exactly in half. I'm going to use half tonight, my first coat on, and then I'm going to put the second coat on tomorrow. I've also got some thinners, because this is the first coat. You can add up to 10%, that means it will absorb into the slab.
So here we go, mixing up both parts of the epoxy. I got these mixer paddles off Amazon, but since then I've found them cheaper in my local hardware store, so make sure you shop around to get the best deals. I started by mixing the hardener for about 2 minutes. You want to mix as slow as possible so you don't suck air into the liquid and create bubbles. Once you've finished mixing, you'll need somewhere to put the mixer. Be careful here, because I put mine down on some blue roll and it soaked right through. Luckily I had a tarpaulin below, so no harm done, but it would have ruined any flooring that was underneath. This is a little painting hack I found on YouTube. You can use a few bits of masking tape around the top of the can and it creates a spout to make pouring easier and stops any drips running down the outside of the can. This is where I discovered that my 5 litre can of paint is actually 4 litres of paint and 1 litre of catalyst. So if you are going to try and split the can like I did, make sure you measure your products thoroughly and don't assume the quantity in the can matches the label on the outside. With the catalyst thoroughly mixed, I moved on to the paint. Inside the can it was definitely split into 2 parts, and it took a long time mixing to get both of them thoroughly mixed and get a smooth consistency. When you are mixing a can of paint, make sure you move the mixing panel to all parts of the can. The paint is a mixture of different chemicals and compounds. Some drop to the bottom, some rise to the top, and others like to cling to the edge. So make sure you run the paddle up and down the sides, right into the corners at the bottom, and slowly rise and lower it multiple times throughout the entire product. I had a bit of a problem here. The bucket had litre graduations in the inside, but as soon as I poured in the paint, it covered over the marks, so I didn't know how much I'd poured in. I ended up using the ½ litre mixing cups I had to hand to accurately measure how much I had. It turned out it was exactly 4 litres, so I put 2 litres in the bucket and put 2 litres back in the can for tomorrow. Here I'm accurately measuring out the xylene thinners. Adding this to the paint makes it flow better and means it will be absorbed into the pores in the slab. We have lift off, no turning back now. I'm mixing the catalyst and the thinners into the paint and then mixing for a good 3 to 4 minutes. Once you mix the 2 parts together, you only have 20 minutes pot time and 45 minutes working time. When the 2 parts are mixed together, a chemical reaction occurs which creates heat. If you leave the mixture in the bucket or a can, the heat can't escape, and the heat causes the reaction to speed up, which then creates more heat, which causes the mixture to heat up, and so on. If you put the mixture in a tray or on the floor and let the heat escape, you give yourself much more working time. Laying down epoxy paint is just like any other painting job. Cutting around the edges with a paintbrush, and then use a roller on a pole for the big coverage. The paint is very forgiving, so you don't need to be concerned about leaving a wet edge, perfect rolling stripes or consistent pole pressure. Just slap it on. In fact, you can use a squeegee instead of a roller to make things quicker and easier.
Well, I have got to say that has turned out absolutely magic. I was a little bit worried when I did the edging that I was going through paint like anything. It seemed to be pulling into all the little bumps and holes in the concrete. And then when I started up the other end with the paint roller, it seemed to go on a treat. But I was having to stretch it out really thin. In some patches it was nearly see-through. But now I've done it all, I've only got a fraction left, so worked out just about right, I would say. I'm well pleased with that. It's worked out a treat. So now I'm just going to tidy up. Battery's about to run out on the camera, so I'm going to turn off for now, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Welcome back to day 2 of the epoxy garage floor paint video. Thoughts on day 1. Overall, it's gone really well. I'm really happy with the finish. I was a bit cautious at the start, so it's a little bit thin right at the back of the garage. Hopefully, second coat will take care of that. It's completely my fault, nothing to do with the paint. It's just I was worried about running out of paint, so I spread it out far too thin. It was really painful tidying up everything out here. I managed to get paint on my hands, then I got paint on the outside of the bags. I got paint on the tarpaulin, which then got on my feet, and then I dragged that all around the outside of the house. So you are going to need something to clear up. You're going to need lots of blue paper. You're probably going to need some xylene thinners, even if you're not using it as thinners. Works well for cleaning it off your hands. After an hour of tidying up, I realised that the solvent fumes were going through the garage door into the house, and we have a tortoise, so we were very panicked for a little while, trying to get him to a place where the fumes weren't so bad. So if you've got any pets, especially any reptiles or amphibians, you need to think about where you're going to put them while you're doing this, because the smell was absolutely horrendous.
For the second and third coats, I ended up sealing up the garage door using masking tape, but the fumes weren't so bad as that first coat.
No measuring today. I can just put the activator straight into the paint, give it a really good mix, get that into the roller tray. I'm going to spend a bit more time edging round. There's lots of little
divots in the concrete, which are very difficult to get the paint right in there, so I'm going to take a bit more time doing that. When I use the roller, I'm going to be much more generous. Oh, and just as an added little bonus today, I'm going to add some decorative crumb, some black, white and grey stone chips. I'm going to throw this on as I do the paint, and then I'll cover it over with a clear coat tomorrow. Never done this before, so let's see how it goes. In an attempt to keep the stone chip coverage consistent, I split the garage into 6 sections and measured out 6 cups of stones so that each section had the same weight of stone. As it happens, once I put the stones down, I didn't like how thin the coverage was, so I ended up using the whole bag and just guessing where to distribute them. Coat 2 was pretty much the same as coat 1. Mix the 2 parts separately, then combine them together and mix thoroughly for 3 or 4 minutes. Just like before, I started by cutting in all the way around the edge with a 50mm brush. One of the epoxy paint manufacturers said that you need to use solvent resistant brushes and rollers when applying epoxy paint. Well, I spent a good few hours looking for solvent resistant brushes, and they were either non-existent or very expensive. In the end, I went for the cheapest brushes from B&Q and I had no troubles whatsoever. During this second coat, I rolled out roughly 1 metre or so right across the room. And then started distributing the stone chips into the wet paint. I took small handfuls of chips and threw them into the air like confetti so the clumps would separate and come down in an evenly distributed cloud. It didn't quite go to plan, and I got a few clumps here and there. Maybe standing further back or throwing even higher would have created a more even coverage. How much stone chip is up to you, and it's just down to personal preference with one small caveat. Epoxy paint reacts to light and will yellow over time. If you use lots of stone chip and completely cover the floor, it should stop the light getting to the epoxy layer and therefore stop it from going yellow. You can use a hypoxic clear coat, which is less likely to go yellow, but hypoxic paint isn't really available in the UK. I'm using an epoxy clear coat top layer, so it doesn't matter how much stone chip I use, it will go yellow over time, but hopefully, because I've got small windows, it won't go yellow very quickly. With the stone evenly distributed on the first strip, I rolled out a new strip of wet paint. I was worried to hear that what would happen when the roller rolled over the chips, but it was no problem. The paint covered over the chip and the chip disappeared, hidden grey on grey. With my technique working, I worked my way backwards out of the garage in 1 to 2 metre strips. I quickly decided that I didn't like how thin the chip coverage was, so I ended up using the rest of the bag. I just guessed where and how much I needed and tried to distribute it as evenly as possible. Didn't quite go perfectly to plan, but I'm over the moon with it. Welcome back to day 3, and day 2 could not have gone any better. The paint has gone on really thick, flat and smooth, and the flake has really made a huge difference, filled in all the imperfections in the floor. It's not perfectly distributed, but it is plenty good enough. Most of the chips have stuck to the floor, but there are a few loose ones, so I'm going to run over the hoover and then I'm going to do a quick top coat with a clear epoxy just to hold these flakes down to the floor. I should have mentioned these are plastic disposable measuring jugs. They've got various increments on them so you can mix to different ratios. They're designed for epoxy, so there's been no problem with the plastic melting with solvents, and I've used quite a few of these, so they're not expensive. They're on Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description below. I'm using my house vacuum this time because my shop vac doesn't have a floor attachment, and it's much easier to cover a large area with a pole. It's raining outside today, so I can't set up my tarpaulin like I have been the other days. So I'm going to mix up the paint here and hope that I don't get any spillages. As you can hear, the bells are going off in the church down the road. And don't worry if you hear any explosions, they're just bird scarers. My village is not under attack.
The mixer that I used yesterday is covered in grey paint. This is a clear coat, so I don't want the grey contaminating the clear. So I'm going to use the one that I used for the catalyst yesterday.
The clear coat is exactly the same as a grey paint. Mix both parts separately, then mix the two together and thoroughly mix for a good 3 to 4 minutes. This is a 2.5 litre can, which should cover 25 square metres, plenty for my 18 square metre garage. I did have quite a bit left over at the end. It was actually really difficult to see where I painted the clear coat, so I ended up guessing in a lot of places.
Done. It has now been 48 hours since I laid the last coat of epoxy, the clear coat, over the surface. The whole process was super simple, a little bit stressful, but definitely something you can do by yourself. If I was to do it again, there's nothing that I would do differently. Everything went perfectly smoothly. The only slightly disappointing thing, there are some areas where the flake hasn't gone down perfectly evenly, but it's good enough. It's a garage floor after all. It's going to get dirty, it's going to get dusty, it's going to get used as a workshop. So overall, I'm extremely pleased with how it's turned out. Even after 48 hours, the floor is still very sticky. I'm hoping I will give it another week or two to properly cure. This stickiness should go away. And in my old floor, my old workshop, once it got a bit of dust on the surface, that really helped. The floor is finished with a very glossy surface finish. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but there are some areas like this bit here where the paint hasn't gone right inside the blemish in the concrete. Do I think this is something that a DIY could do? If you've got a bit of experience with painting using a roller, I definitely think you can do this. There are a few tricky steps, getting the two-part epoxy all mixed up. If you follow the instructions and do everything quickly with lots of space, definitely think most people should be able to give it a go. So I would call this project a success. If you'd like to see more DIY jobs, hit that subscribe button. Let me know what projects you're working on in the comments below, and I'll see you very shortly for the next video on Chris's workshop.